Yes, guys, welcome to your first Australian soccer news video. As I will be starting to do a bunch of A-League content over the next few days, expanding my audience. I'm a big fan of Australian soccer. I watch the A-League. I watch the Australian Cup. I invest a lot of my time keeping an eye on Australian football as I just arrange my stuff so for about mid-recording, but I need to make sure that lighting's fine. I miss this fine. As we go into Western United being kicked out for league due to financial constraints, and the possible teams who could be replacing it. Heidelberg, who did knock out Wellington Phoenix 3-0, 4-0. 4-0. And then also before that, knocking out Western Sydney Wanderers 3-0. Well, they could be playing the Australian soccer this season. And a few other pieces that transfers, because why not? First off, we are going to be starting with the big news. Coming from Marco Viggiano. A tight time frame will work against the hopes of South Melbourne or Preston potentially replacing Western United in the upcoming A-League season. However, regardless of Western United, or whether Western United is stripped of its A-League licence, South Melbourne and Preston could apply for A-League entry in the 26-27 season if the APL's preferred option of an expansion team from Canberra fails to eventuate. The A-League remains in talks with a Canberra consortium with a decision yet to be made in the upcoming months about its chances of joining the A-League next season, or not even the A-League, the APL next season, or next year, sorry. If the Canberra bid fails to go over the line, South Melbourne and Preston's hopes of joining the A-League in future years would improve. Now, my thoughts is that Western United had a very good year this year in the A-League. They finished third. And look, you can have teams who do sit 1 year and do amazing the next season. Okay, we've seen this countless times. And I see this being something that happens again this season. Whether that is with MacArthur or whether Western United stays in the A-League and is consistent. Consistently getting top 6, qualifying to elimination playoffs, which is 6th to 3rd, then top 2 automatically qualifies to, I'm calling it semis, okay? You can call it what you want. Regardless, could I see a South Melbourne or a Preston competing in the A-League? South Melbourne has the stadium capacity to financially compete, and also probably due to regulations, to compete in the A-League. South Melbourne, I do think, out of these two, has the hard chance of competing in the A-League itself. Because when you look at the A-League, it's not hard to outdo Perth Glory, okay? With all due respect, Perth Glory are quite ever so sick. Their past 2 seasons, they finished bottom. Like, that's it. So anyone can do better. But can a team like South Melbourne knock on the door of that top 6 in its first season like Auckland FC? Maybe. Do I think they will be able to win it in their first season? Probably not. Do I think they can get top 6? Like I said, maybe. Do I think they can compete? If they get added, I do think the high chances are South Melbourne competes, Preston struggles. That's my thoughts. I've not watched enough of Preston though, but I've watched a few games of South Melbourne. And I can tell you this now. South Melbourne look like a half-decent side compared to the others who was in the Australian Cup, or are in the Australian Cup. So I do see South Melbourne being able to compete. Now, maybe wondering, well, Luke, Heidelberg scored 8 past, well, combined, by the way, past 7 or 8, past 2 A-League sides, Wellington Phoenix and Western Sydney Wanderers. Well, are they competing? Well, Heidelberg, I believe, will be competing in the championship. Let me just get that confirmed. If I can actually find the tweet. Can't be able to find the tweet, but I believe they'll be added to the championship. In fact, let me just get this up on Twitter. Heidelberg United didn't have all of the tweets put up beforehand. Just sure about this. But yeah, I believe they've qualified for the Australian Championship, which is very good for them. Now, do I see them interrogating into the A-League in future seasons? Yes. Do I think it'd be right now? No. Now, I obviously have a lot of respect for Heidelberg, because I feel like them as a club play some very solid football. I enjoyed watching them as well, and it's one of the non-A-League sides I could watch every single weekend, because they play good aggressive football, they can compete. And this is what I was pushing for a Heidelberg in the A-League, which we haven't got, sadly. But they have managed to get added to a higher division. And as I was saying that, they lost. No one. That's probably best in the Women's League. But yeah, Heidelberg United are Australian Championship bound. The Australia Cup semi-finalists has finally locked in their spot in the inaugural season of the Australian Championship. Practically, I think they will still compete in the NPL, but in addition, they'll be added to a group stage and knockout tournament where they will be joining Wollongong Wolves and Marconi Stallions in Group B. So really, really big round of applause for Heidelberg. Some other transfer news, as we have seen a potential deal closing in as Motherwell are closing in on signing Oscar Priestman from Western Sydney Wanderers. This has come from Anthony R. Joseph, once again another exclusive from an Australian source. Look, I've watched Western Sydney Wanderers a few times. I thought he was a half-decent player. Motherwell signing him, that would actually be a good move for Oscar, getting himself into the European picture. And I believe I have one more piece of news. And don't worry, next one will be way more organised. Sorry about this. But to be fair, I think I've had worse. But yeah, also Brøndby IF have signed Marcus Eunice from Western Sydney Wanderers on a 4-year contract. Denmark sources report a transfer fee of just over €300,000. However, Western Sydney Wanderers stated it was a club record fee of just about 800,000 Australian dollars. Now, you can believe which one you want. You can believe the Danish sources. You can believe the Australian sources. I will choose to believe the Australian ones. So, 800,000 Australian dollars. Look, I didn't get time to watch Marcus Eunice. But from what I've watched, once again, another good talent coming out of Australia. If Brøndby can develop him right, I think he will be a superb signing. But yes, that's going to be the end of the first of many A-League/Australian football content. Stick around, as I will be doing my Australian Cup semi-final predictions soon, in the next few days. Once we get the semi-finals confirmed. The final quarter-final game is tonight, which I believe is Brisbane versus New York Jets, but I will happily get myself corrected. Newcastle Jets. No, so it is MacArthur. 7 a.m. So if I'm awake, I'll watch it and then maybe I'll post a review on it. But yeah, Newcastle Jets versus MacArthur. Winner of that game goes into the semi-finals. To face. Fuck's sake. Yeah, I'll just give you that in a whole nother video. But that is the final quarter-final game. I hope you guys did enjoy. Like, subscribe, turn on the post notifications, and peace.